Hey pushers, so I'm up here at school recording a video here. Today, what you'll be going through is kind of as we wind up this period and getting through the end of really period 8, coming to the end of the Cold War. We really won't actually end the Cold War until we begin chapter 9, but we're starting to see how the threat of communism isn't quite so great. We've already talked about the Watergate scandal. We've gone through like these Arab oil embargoes that was stemming from the Suez Canal crisis, if you remember that. Stagflation was big. Stagflation is a word, and you can look at this cartoon right here. Stagflation is what was going on in the late 70s. Go home and ask your parents if they remember what stagflation was all about, because we had really high inflation. And so prices of things were like incredibly expensive, but we also had high unemployment, and it became known as stagflation. It was a very difficult time, and so people were more actually by that point interested in, how do I keep a job? How do I fill my vehicle? There were long lines at the pump to get gas. And pay for the basic necessities, a new washer, whatever it happened to be, because I can't worry about everything else that's going on in the world. So we start to see a shift in public confidence, in the way of people viewed and looked at political life and international policies as well. They were a little bit more concerned with the home front. Okay, so the 1970s saw growing clashes between conservatives and liberals over social and cultural issues, the power of the federal government, race, and movements for greater individual rights. So the War Powers Act. The War Powers Act was essentially ineffective, but it was passed in 1973. If you think back, so we're starting with Truman, who sent troops into Korea, Eisenhower, actually probably Eisenhower who sent troops into Korea, Kennedy with the Bay of Pigs. We have, and actually Kennedy starts sending advisors to Vietnam. Johnson escalates Vietnam really big. Nixon continues Vietnam and then is bombing in Cambodia. The presidents were taking a lot of presidential authority that they did not have. How did I term it? They escalated military presence abroad, and they didn't have the authority to do that. So finally, Congress passed what's called the War Powers Act. Essentially, it didn't do a lot, but it did kind of give a sign that we were trying to rein in the presidency and have a balance of power again between the three branches. Of course, we have issues like Bakke versus University of California, and I know I did mention this. This was the guy there, what Bakke means, the percentage of, the case was about a man trying to get into medical school, and he was denied because of his race, because they had to fill a certain quota to have a diverse student body to be representatives in the medical community or for the medical school. So it went all the way up to the University of California, or it went all the way up to the Supreme Court. Phyllis Schlafly's Stop ERA movement. You know, if you remember, do you remember reading about Betty Friedan and the feminist mystique? If you look at Betty Friedan, like over here, Phyllis Schlafly is like as far as you can get away from Betty Friedan. Phyllis Schlafly was extremely conservative, very, very, you know, what was interesting is she called herself a housewife, but she was very active in politics. She called herself like a mom and a housewife, but only did like political things on the side. But she was an author, she was a political activist. She did a lot, but she did not want to, the ERA is the Equal Rights Amendment. She didn't think that women were equal to men, nor should they be. But we're not actually making them be in the same sphere. Women are women and men are men, and like you can't say that they are equal, so let's not try. And she was actually quite progressive. The Roe versus Wade was a real, Phyllis Schlafly was a Catholic. Roe versus Wade was a real dagger in her heart. She was very much an abortion opponent, and so she worked quite tirelessly to not have women be on the same level as men, because she said women are women and men are men, and let's not try to confuse those two roles. I think she passed away not too long ago, and I remember reading an article that when there were kind of like the transgender bathrooms that were coming out, Target was one of the first ones who had bathrooms for both genders at the same time, and you could choose whichever bathroom you went to. And Phyllis Schlafly was like an old woman, and she was just like beside herself, because she was trying to say, like, here's the problem. This is where we've gotten to. We're trying to say that women are equal to men, and now we have, genders, choosing whatever gender you want to go into a restroom. And so she was very hated. A lot of people did not like her for what she had to say, because she was quite conservative and looked at as a kind of a foe against her own gender, against women. Rapid economic and social changes in American society. Changes in American society fostered a sense of optimism in the post-war years. And that's really kind of what you should remember. In those post-war years, we're talking after World War II, America was like on top of the world. We're the biggest superpower. We have the most dominant military. Life is really quite good in those post-war years. A burgeoning private sector, federal spending, the baby boom, and technological developments helped spur that growth. So I think I've talked to you enough about that baby boom. And take a look at that graph. The amount of births in the thousands, look at right after the war, 46, 47, 48, again by about 51 or 52, we've got big amounts of baby boomer generations here. And if I don't know if you've called your parents a boomer, but if they were born any time between the year 1945 and about I would say closer to about 1970, they're probably in the baby boomer generation. Baby boomer generation in red, looks like that goes up to about 64. I might push it a little bit closer to 70, but we'll go with the graph. So there was increased spending on housing and education due to the GI Bill of Rights. The GI Bill of Rights was passed. It was called the Servicemen's Adjustment Act, and it gave service members returning after the war money to go to college. And so now we see more and more people going to college, attending college, but they're moving away from the cities and out into the suburbs. This is now when we get, the 2.5 kids and the white picket fence and the dad pushing the lawnmower on Saturday and honey, I'm home. And so this is kind of that whole era. Cold War defense spending increased a lot, actually. Now, not nearly what it was in World War II. In World War II, I think our defense budget was 40% of the entire budget, which is astronomical. I think during the Cold War, our defense spending was about 10% of the gross national product. Typically it's about 2 or 3%. So it definitely amped up. And the Cold War lasted for a very long time. So we did spend a lot of money in things like the space race and in NASA. NASA was created with, it was Eisenhower, 58. NASA was created after Sputnik, and we felt we needed to catch up. We needed to compete in that space race. And so here, I have Apollo 11. Now, again, ask your parents, find out, or maybe even your grandparents, find out where they were, what they were doing when they heard a man landed on the moon. For me, I wasn't alive yet. My sister was born that week when they landed on the moon. And so my mom was she talks about how she was getting home from the hospital. And so 1969 was a really big year. So let me play this real quick. I think I'd like to play it real quick. Well, there it goes. Okay.
Why does it take forever to find something to watch?
Just start with Hulu. Live channels, exclusive series, and originals. It's everything you love.
Everything I love is on Hulu?
everything I love, including me?
Everything? Love?
It's on Hulu? Nomadland?
Last Porch and Family Guy?
Every drama that I love is on Hulu?
Time to have everything you love. Time to have Hulu.
Sorry, I couldn't get past it. So Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Michael Collins, they're the first crew of Apollo 11. Most of America was watching this on television. Most people had a television set by 1969 in their house. It took 4 days to reach the moon. Wow, less than 40 seconds of fuel was left when the lunar module landed on the moon. Cutting it a little close.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Beautiful, just beautiful.
You know, to think that, so 650 million people watched it. Wow. To think that they didn't, develop an airplane until just in that century, about the turn of the century, 1900s, 1910.
All the people on this earth are truly one.
Thank you, Mr. President.
By 1969, we're not only in the air, we're above the earth. They safely landed, splashed down in the Pacific. They're picked up, and it is a successful moon landing and return. All right, so I wanted to put that out there. I think it's a good thing to remember that how incredibly fast-paced technology was. The growth of aerospace industry, the increase in the service sector. There was a lot of changes. Now we see a lot more jobs in healthcare and education and commerce and entertainment businesses, because there was more money to go around, and so people are buying refrigerators, they're buying cars, they're going to school, they're going to movies, and these are all things that really contributed to a very strong economy. As higher education opportunities and new technologies rapidly expanded, increasing social mobility encouraged the migration of the middle class to the suburbs and many of the Americans to the south and west. The Sun Belt region emerged as a significant political and economic force. So the Sun Belt, we even still kind of refer to it as today, the Sun Belt we call anything kind of south of, we consider the Sun Belt like southwest. We don't usually put Florida in the Sun Belt, but sometimes we do. We definitely don't put the South in the Sun Belt, like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Texas, Louisiana. We don't necessarily put them in the Sun Belt, but we might put Texas for sure, New Mexico, Arizona is a big one, California. These were all areas that now people started like really campaigning and saying, okay, who are the people who are going to vote for Republicans? Who are the kind of people who vote for Democrats in these states, in this Sun Belt state? Suburbanization. If you take a look at that picture, I mean, sometimes it might even be in our own neighborhoods. When you look down, the row in your neighborhood, these houses went up so quickly, and they were just like the little typical ranch house that almost looks like a little bungalow. And suburbanization happened very quickly. These houses probably were built to last, actually, and you can still see probably in, say, parts of North Fargo, for instance, some of those original 1950s houses. And so suburbanization, again, probably due to all the GIs returning and using their GI bills to buy homes, to go to college, and to start a family in those suburban neighborhoods. Levitt Towns. So I'm gonna do a spy with you just together, because I have to laugh at this. I don't have a lake house, but maybe if you do, or you know somebody who does, I always kind of giggle to myself, because do you ever go to the lake and feel like you're just like going to work for the weekend at the lake? William Levitt is, he was basically a very pro-American, anti-communist guy, but he said no man who owns his own house and lot can be a communist. He has too much to do. And so think about why he would have said that. Like, why would he have said in 1948, no man who owns a house and a lot can be a communist? Because think about how much work there is to do when you own a house. If you're renting a home, you got a lot of extra time. If you own your home, you are mowing the lawn, you're fertilizing the lawn, you're doing repairs on the basement, you're fixing the windows, you're painting the house, you're repairing the fence. You're like doing all of these things. And I always kind of have to giggle about how people who go to the lake, and it's kind of like work camp, that you just go to work on the lake house on the weekends. And so it's interesting that, nothing really has changed, right? People who are good, down to earth, solid workers, tend to own their own homes, and then they tend to be very democratic minded, and like, this is mine and I own it, and therefore I need to take care of it. So I can't be collectively worried about all these other people, because this is my individual spot, and I'm proud of it, and I want to take care of it. That's the idea. Okay, so I just spied the whole document for you. Let's see. Aerospace industry boom in the South and the West. We see huge companies going out, especially in Wisconsin, in Washington State, in California. We see big booms in the aerospace industry in the southern part of the country and in the West. And actually, I think we are going to end right there. Yep, we're going to end right there. We'll talk about these last few slides as we are together. Well, it must be on Monday. We'll be done. Tuesday we'll review, and the following Thursday, a week from today, will be your test. So talk to you later. Bye.